The time is exactly 8:53 a.m. It is a Wednesday morning, the 16th of November. This is News and Views with me, Julie Ali, on Salam Media. Now, next we are going to be talking with Stephen Kaplan. He is the project manager behind Understanding SAICE's 2022 Infrastructure Report Card. Some interesting information out of that report card, but I guess the all-important question is, what do we do with all of this information, which is very factual, which is very disturbing? And I guess it's really about government trying to get their act together. So let's welcome to the program our guest, and that, of course, is you, Stephen Kaplan. A very good morning. Welcome.
Good morning to you, Julie, and thank you for having me on your radio station or your TV station to talk to your viewers.
Lovely to be talking to you now. With due respect to you, Stephen, I must say that when I read the report, I kind of said to myself, because I do the news and views and current affairs show every morning, and I kind of said, so we all know this, but I'm going to have you unpack it. We all know this. We see how infrastructure is decaying and decaying so rapidly. But nobody's taking notice. Government has just closed his eyes to all of this. But let's first unpack the report card, and then let you and I engage about how we move forward. Please, God, there's got to be a way. So a very good morning once again and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, why have you undertaken to do this infrastructure report card? Whom were you commissioned by to do this?
We are not commissioned by anybody. We feel that it is our mandate as the largest voluntary association representing the civil engineering profession in South Africa.
Wow.
And we believe that, with our 15,500 members behind us, that we have that mandate to conduct a report like this. We're not the only country in the world that does it. It is done in America and England and several countries around Africa at the moment. And so we produced this report card. This is the fourth one we produced. We did one in 2006, then 2011, 2017, and now recently the 2022 one. So we have the opportunity to look at the trends as well from the one report card to the next.
What's it saying to you over the last four report cards that you, as the engineering fraternity with that many members on board, what sort of a trend have you picked up? I guess I even know how you're going to respond to that question, but be that as it may, what is it showing us? And are you and the rest of the members, are you more and more concerned by what you see unfolding in South Africa?
Yeah, of course we're concerned. I think just to give you some indication, the report card sort of grades all the sectors. We've got 23 different sectors that we look at, and they've each been graded in sort of like a school-like format almost, with A as being world class, B is fit for future, C is satisfactory for now, D is at risk of failure, and E is unfit for purpose. So we've looked at all of the sectors, the roads, the rail, the air, the harbors, waste, sanitations, health, education, etc. As I say, 23 of these, and we've graded each of the subsectors within those sectors and looked at the grading. So I suppose, at the end of the day, it's hard to kind of do an overall grading, because it's a kind of a conglomerate of all the grades of all the sectors. But in fact, at the end of the day, one's got to recognize that an overall grade is like an average of all the grades, and it takes into account those grades that are A class, world class, and those that are in the E, unfit for purpose. So in the first report card in 2006, and I'm going to just give you the trend, South Africa rated the infrastructure at a D, which means it's at risk of failure, a D plus, so a robust risk of failure. And that was based on the current condition of all of the sectors combined. Then in 2011, of course, that was the year after 2010 World Cup, the Soccer World Cup. Things had improved significantly. There were large investments by state and private sector in infrastructure. Obviously, the stadiums themselves, but all the infrastructure supporting the stadiums, hotels, accommodation, roads, rail improved. If you remember how train got its act together before World Cup, all of that kind of thing. So we increased the rating to a C minus, which means sort of
Wow.
satisfactory for now, a little bit on the frail side, but satisfactory for now. But then with the 2017 report card, we could see the same growing poor attitude by a state towards maintenance and the continued ongoing theft and vandalism of the infrastructure. And this resulted in a downturn back to the D plus. However, now in this new IRC 22, we've noticed a further downgrade um,
Ooh.
to D, which is now really at risk of failure. And that's the lowest grade we've ever recorded, which is of great concern to us. And it's essentially due to the weak institutions that lack the appropriate technical decision-making skills, the funding, obviously, for the investment, and the other factors which are besides that are the increasing culture of non-payment of services. I mean, there's a culture of non-payment of services which really ties the municipalities and restricts them to actually paying, the bulk suppliers for those services, like Eskom or Rand Water, for example. And then the other thing is the vandalism and theft of materials and equipment due to the dissatisfaction of non-delivery, and I understand why it's happening, but the result of that is devastating on the infrastructure that remains. So there are the three principal factors that affect that infrastructure.
Shocking indeed, but I think this just indicates to me how bad it is. We talk
Mm.
about it pretty loosely in our everyday lives about the country being on the brink of collapse. Am I being too dramatic when I say that the country is on the brink of collapse?
It's you are being a tad dramatic. I think we split the infrastructure into two separate sort of categories. We talk about the economic infrastructure, and that's the infrastructure which makes the business activity possible, and that includes things like bulk transport, bulk water supply, energy supply, the electricity supply, and communication. So that's what keeps the businesses going and the economy of the country going and sustainable. Then you get the social infrastructure, which is that which meets the basic needs like drinking water, sanitation, hospitals, schools, public transport, etc. So, clearly without adequate economic infrastructure, the businesses cannot perform. And that acts negatively on the economic stability or sustainability of the country. And that, of course, in turn acts on unemployment, which is already at an all-time high. The inadequate social infrastructure impacts negatively on the well-being and the health and the quality of life of the community at every level. So what I need to say is that the actual economic infrastructure of the country remains, as you'll see in our report, in a sort of a reasonable condition. It's getting grades of, B and C, etc. And so it's remaining in a satisfactory condition, except, and of course this is the one big except, is Eskom's energy generation. That is definitely not in an acceptable condition right now. But the thing is, our social infrastructure, that's the one with the basics, the water, the health, education, etc. That is continuing to deteriorate at an alarming rate, and that is of concern. That really is of concern.
So the big question then is, what can government do to improve the country's infrastructure rating? Apart from the obvious, which is stop the looting, stop the cronyism, stop the nepotism, etc., etc. What can be done, and is it salvageable at this late stage?
Of course, I think you have to be positive and you have to believe that it's always salvageable. But it takes a commitment. It takes a commitment by both the public sector and the private sector. There's no doubt about it. It's not an easy fix, and it's going to take years to put right. So I've listed a couple of things that we need to put this thing right. Firstly, we need to increase the spend on investment in infrastructure. Last in 2020, we spent 13.7% of GDP, and that needs to increase into world norms to at least 30% by 2030. So doubling it in the next 10 years. I mean, so that's a significant increase in infrastructure spend. We need to reduce the habitual underspending of infrastructure budgets by those public service providers who are not held accountable, who are prone to service delivery failures, poor governance, weak institutional capacity, and etc. And then we need to introduce revised procurement regulations to minimize the recurring revenue management failures. Okay, that's a nice way of saying corruption. Okay, so we need to find ways to minimize that. So we're calling it revenue management failures. We need to sensitize those decision makers, again, in government and the state-owned companies, of the importance of both the economic and social infrastructure, as I've discussed, and of its deteriorating condition. There seems to be a lack of awareness almost. We've got to sensitize them to that, and in particular, alert them to the consequences that occur if maintenance of infrastructure is neglected and the renewal or replacement thereof is delayed. And then next, we need to provide assistance. I think this is where the public sector comes in. We've got to provide assistance to those decision makers and their support teams. We need to persuade them about the importance of maintenance and life cycle planning, and to provide guidance on remedial activities. You know, they've got to stop repairing maintenance by knee-jerk reactions. You know, fixing potholes is a knee-jerk reaction. You know, broken pipes, it's a knee-jerk reaction. If there was proper cycle planning and proper scheduled maintenance, you wouldn't have potholes, you wouldn't have broken pipes, etc. You wouldn't have electricity problems. All of Eskom's problems are due to a lack of scheduled and planned maintenance over the last 30 years. Okay, and then of course we need to encourage those decision makers to enhance their capacity, you know, their decision-making capacity with technical people. So we need to highlight them about the role of civil engineering profession in that service industry, and through that we get better planning, design, construction, operation, and maintenance of infrastructure. So that's how you put it right. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a slow process, but without the commitment to start the process, then it's a hard battle.
Well, Stephen Kaplan, all I can say is thank you to you and all of those 15,000 other members you talk about. And we do hope and pray that this report gets to the right people and let them start engaging with you and other civil engineers and people in the engineering fraternity, and start making things happen and getting this country back on track. I commend you and the rest of the people involved in the SAIC's 2022 infrastructure report card, and I hope and pray that lots of goodness comes out of it and that common sense does prevail. Thank you. God bless and go well.
And thank you, Judy. Thank you very much for having me. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
9:07 exactly, and we are now going to be crossing over to Zahid Jadwit with the news bulletin of the day. Please stand by, and thereafter we go into the second hour of news and views right here on Salam Media.